Hi, I'm Mike Lardy,
I'm Daniel Mears.
and today's video is about why discipleship. So, why discipleship? Why do a whole blog on discipleship? What's the big deal? Why is it such a big deal? Why is it a big deal to Jesus? Why is it not a big deal to the average church? Why is it such a big deal at Woodlands? And where are we going with discipleship? Well, it's questions like these that we're going to answer in this blog and in these blogs to come, the videos to come. You're going to hear all about as we share scriptures about discipleship, as we share insights from leadership, from people who are making disciples, as we share tips and strategies on how to do that as we follow the process of making disciples. And so Daniel's going to share with you just a little bit about his big why he believes discipleship is such a big deal.
Why discipleship? For me, it boils down to one time period of my life. For 8 years, I was a youth pastor. And during that time, I saw many kids come to church and come to services, come to events, come to camps, and come to outreaches. But I was really close to just a handful of kids, maybe 10, maybe 20 kids at the most. I can remember them. I remember them by name. I still have contact with them. Some of them I'm still even friends with to this day. But now looking back, I realize that small handful group of 10 to 25 kids over an entire 8 years worth of ministry, boiling it down to those few kids that I was closest with, only a very small portion of them are still walking with the Lord. Maybe 2 or 3, 5 at the most, still walking with the Lord. And that really breaks my heart to think back of all that time and energy I spent in a youth ministry trying to do my very best to reach kids and reach people for Jesus Christ, and realizing now, man, a lot of it was kind of a failure. And the reason why I think it was a failure is because during those years, I feel like I failed to realize the truth of what Scripture had laid out, that services and events and outreaches and camps, while they're good things, there's none of those things in Scripture really. What there is in Scripture is one big idea for ministry. Jesus said it. The disciples did it. Paul writes about it. Timothy writes about it in Scripture. It was go make disciples. And I believe if during my 8 years of youth ministry, if I would have been intentionally and relationally and biblically making disciples, I believe out of all those kids, that 10 or 20, I believe such a higher percentage of them would be walking with the Lord now. Because instead of running off and searching for the success that I think I could find on my own in human terms, if I would have been focusing on what God told me to do in Scripture, which was to make disciples, I believe that there would have been a much more fruitful time of my life. And so the big takeaway for me is this, is I don't want to look back at another time of my life and think, man, those several years, those were kind of a failure. I want to look back now and say, during those times of my life, from here on out, I want to look back and be able to say, in those times I made disciples, and they were the most fruitful years of my life. And so that's the big why for me, why discipleship. And now I'm going to ask Mike to share with you his why for discipleship.
With personal responsibility, taking responsibility to make disciples. I've grown up in 2 churches now since I've become a Christian. They were both growing churches. And the problem with growing churches is that if they grow without a culture of discipleship in place, then the leaders get overloaded, then they get burnt out, and then the church suffers. And both the churches that I've been involved with have suffered tremendously even to this day. And so without that in place, without discipleship taking place, without a vibrant culture of discipleship, all that excitement that you have for God, as you heard from Daniel, all those kids, all the people that come through your ministry and they're excited for God, that's just short-lived. And so I'm looking for lasting fruit. And the second reason that my big why for discipleship is that I have a God-made need for deep relationships. And yes, men need deep relationships too. And so what I mean by that is going beyond surface level interactions with people and really understanding what affects them, really letting them know you as a person. And that happens every single week inside of a relational group environment. And so I get that at least once a week, if not several times a week. I get that need satisfied for those deep relationships as I interact with the people in my biblical relational small group. And so those are my 2 big whys. So that's where we're coming from. Daniel and I are super passionate about this. We want to see Woodlands come alive in ways that we haven't even imagined yet. And so we know that the road to get there is paved by biblical relational discipleship, and that's the way God made it. So
Yeah, and look in your email box every Friday morning from an email straight from me. It'll have our new blog in it every single week. And so look for that to be encouraged, inspired, motivated, and to be learning more about discipleship.
So that's it. Leave us a comment down below. Thumbs up the video, or thumbs down if you want to. Just give us a reaction. And disciple makers, let's go out there and let's get them this week.